Okay, well, good evening to everyone who is here. I'm so glad you joined. Thanks so much to Crystal, who is the founder of this wonderful Journey to Me group, who invited me to um, just provide some self-care type topics over the next couple Sundays, this is our second Sunday, and we'll have another one in April. Today I would like to talk a little bit about understanding your temperament,
Absolutely.
why we act the way that we do. So first, just so that everyone knows, like, who is she? Why is she talking about this? Um, so I'm Cheryl Bridges, the founder and CEO of Bridges to Life, which is a faith-based life coaching organization with kind of a specialty in temperament coaching, helping people to understand their temperament. As you see here, I'm also a mental health coach, a pastoral counselor, and we can talk more about that later. So let's get started. So why do I act the way that I do? Does anybody ever even wonder, like, why I do the things I do, why I say what I say, why I respond the way I respond, why I don't respond at all? It could be so many things. Just things like, why do I go from 0 to 100 when somebody pulls out in front of me on the highway? Boom. Or why don't I? Why does it not bother me, but it bothers, my friend? And why are we so different? Why does my brother love to swim and I'm afraid of the water? Like, there's just so many things that we wonder about why we do what we do. And the answer really is what we're talking about today. It is our temperaments. And our temperament, as you see here, refers to it's our natural disposition. This is the way in which we're going to behave pretty much consistently. God-given inborn traits that we actually were born with. It's our temperament that, makes us either shy or outgoing, introverted, extroverted. It's the temperament. And some people hear the word temperament and think temper, but it's not all about temper. It is just the way you behave. Some people have maybe a quick temper, some people don't, but it's not, it's just about what you do and how you behave consistently. So first, in order to, to understand your temperament and why you are the way you are, you first have to understand who you are, right? You have to know who you are in order to become who you want to be. So that's why I believe that understanding our temperament and how we behave is the start of that journey in trying to bridge that gap in between from well, who am I really to who I want to be. I call that sometimes a lot of us are living in the gap, in that middle part where we might be stuck because we're trying to figure out who we want to be, but we first got to know, okay, who we are and why do I do the things I do. So I'd like to take a minute just to explain a little bit about our temperament and how it works. So when we are born, we are created with an inborn temperament. This is who we are when we're born. These are characteristics that we'll talk about in a minute too. But our inborn temperament is how we start. This is who we are. Then, once we begin to be raised by our families, whether that's parents, grands, guardians, whoever it is, they instill certain values and principles in us. And that is what develops our character. And our character is really who we are, you guys, like when nobody's watching. This is who you are. So we're born with this temperament. Then we begin to develop a character based on how we're raised, who we're raised by, where they take us, what they do with us. We begin to develop our character. But then finally, after that, as we get older and we go to school and church and we have friends and different types of people that we meet, places we go, then we develop a personality. So we go from our inborn temperament, how we're born, to this character that gets developed based on how we're raised. And then we develop a personality. And the personality really is a mask that covers the flaws, maybe that we don't necessarily want people to know about in our character. We probably are hiding them from ourselves too, acting like they're not there. So the personality sometimes acts as a mask. And I was saying to somebody the other day, like these masks that we wear now, if once you wear these masks too long, you can't breathe. So personality masks tend to bring on all of our anxiety and stress because we are operating outside of who we really were created to be. So after a while, sometimes it just becomes normal. So once we start understanding that our personality that's not really who we are, that helps us on that journey to understanding who we are so we can become who we want to be. If there's any questions too, you all can just stop along the way. It's very informal. But now I'll go into some interesting facts about temperament. So we mentioned already, temperament refers to your natural disposition, the way in which you will consistently behave. This is how you're going to behave, whether you're introverted, extroverted, shy, have a temper, not have a temper, um, slow moving, fast paced, whatever it is, this is how you consistently are. These are your inborn traits that you were born with. So this is interesting. Your temperament, it's hereditary, and it comes from a certain number of people. Anybody have any idea what that even means? Who those people would be? It is your.
Are they speaking of DNA wise?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. Your
Yep.
mom, your dad, grandma.
Yep. So 6 people, 6. Mom, dad, maternal grandparents, and paternal grandparents. So
Uh-huh.
if you think about those people in your life, some of them you may not know. I certainly don't know all of mine, but the ones that you can probably see yourself, some things, some traits that come from them. So it's hereditary. This is your gene pool, mom, dad, but grandparents on both sides. So it comes from 6 people. And some people go, when I say that, some people are like, oh Lord, that like, well, that's who I am. And it's okay, because this is how we were created. There's nothing wrong with it at all. All temperaments, though, have both strengths and weaknesses. So every temperament that we're going to talk about briefly this evening, they all have strengths and they all have weaknesses. I remember when I found out what my temperament was through taking an assessment at some point. My temperament came back as what is called melancholy, and we'll talk about that. But I looked at all the strengths and it was like, oh, okay, melancholy temperaments have one of the highest IQs of all the temperaments. So I was patting myself on the back. I was like, okay, all right. And then I looked at the weaknesses side, and it said things like the melancholy is also the most prone for anxiety and depression because melancholy temperaments tend to overthink. And, Crystal, we talked a lot about overthinking. And so sometimes that causes so much, self-reflection, and it sometimes causes that mood, that negative thinking mood to take over. So all temperaments have something. They have good traits and they have weaknesses that we just need to understand them, become self-aware of them, and then we start working on them and provide balance. We'll talk about that in a minute too. So no one temperament is better than another. Sometimes I teach classes on temperament and people will hear certain things and all of a sudden it becomes a competition, well, my temperament is so much better than yours. No, they all have stuff. So once you learn more about them, you'll realize that we all have weaknesses that we can try to overcome. And then guess what? Your temperament will never what? Never change. It will never change. Some people kind of shake their head on that, but why not? Because it's hereditary. It's in our DNA. But what we can do, we can't change the temperament, but we can try to modify some of the behaviors in that temperament that we feel can be strengthened. So it won't change, but we can do what we can to modify some of those behaviors. So, and when we talk about temperament too, it has a lot to do with emotions and managing our emotions, how we manage them. So this is just kind of a side note. I wanted to mention that there's two emotions that if we don't deal with them and if they're left unchecked, they can actually be so life limiting for us. And we all deal with one of them. Like you might think you're cool, but every one of us has one of these, maybe both, but usually one of these emotions that is a challenge for us. Does anybody know what one of them might be?
That's interesting.
One.
Anger.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
Yep, anger is one. And the other one is fear.
Okay.
So if you think about it, we all deal with one of these. Mine is not anger, mine is fear. Over the years, I've gotten better with that, but being afraid to try things for different reasons. Never had an issue with anger, but as I thought about it, mine was fear. But these are two emotions that if we don't, kind of understand them and work on them, I say they'll be life limiting, right? Because anger can limit your life because anger is one letter away from danger. Danger. Anger can really get us in some situations if we don't manage it. And fear also limits us from doing things that we probably have in us, but fear holds us back for so many different reasons: the fear of failure, fear of success, even. So those things can be really life limiting. So I always encourage people, to just be honest with yourself.
Mhm.
This is what this temperament is all about. Creating a self awareness that says, yeah, okay, I need to get my fear in check. I used to be afraid to fly. I said, okay, eventually, sure, you're not going to go anywhere. Everybody going to be going everywhere and you're going to be home.
Mhm.
But I had to really rein that in and start asking myself, like, what am I really afraid of? And depending on your faith and different things that you may rely on in your life, you have to kind of connect to something
Mhm.
to try
Mhm.
to overcome some of these. So that's a part of temperament. But I would encourage you all to think about that. Which one of those might you deal with and need to kind of focus on a little bit? So okay, so how do you understand your temperament? How do you figure out what it is and what to do about it? So well, in my particular organization, again, I do temperament coaching. So this is the process that I use in my business, which is identifying the temperament first, number one, which is through an assessment of some sort. There are many, many, many assessments. I'll even talk about one this evening that you can just go online and do for free. But once you identify what your temperament is, and there's 4 types that we're going to talk about, you then have to discover what the strengths and weaknesses are of the temperament, and most importantly, what the needs are of the temperament. Because all of our temperaments have certain needs. And when our needs aren't getting met, that's when we look to meet the needs in ways that aren't productive, usually,
Mhm.
because we're trying to fill, a gap, a void, a hole. So we start trying to fill that with all kinds of stuff, shopping or eating or alcohol or whatever it might be. We all find things. So once we discover the strengths, weaknesses, and needs, then we have to start working to that the step of modifying some of those behaviors that aren't helping us, that are not productive for us at all. So identify the temperament, discover its strengths, weaknesses, and needs, and then work to modify some of the behaviors that are in the temperament. And that's not the easy, that's the hard part, is that modification. It's very intentional, but once you're aware of it, to me, that starts the process right there. 'Cause
I had a
where, yeah,
question, I mean, a comment. I
sure,
think for me, can you hear me?
I can. Uh-huh.
Oh, I think for me, like, let's say diabetes, like it runs in my family, right?
Uh-huh.
So that's the temperament kind of the family, and it's hereditary. But I was like, nah, I can't get it. I can't. I had my father have it for so long. So you can do things to stop it. You know what I mean? Like to stop the cycle, and also prayer to break the chains or break those generational curses. That's
Ab-
how I look at it. You
Absolutely.
know what I mean?
What did
Because
you do,
especially with,
Carla? What did you do to try to stop some of that?
oh, well, one, pray all the time about it, and two, it's not easy. I just came out of being pre-diabetic, and now I'm not pre-diabetic, but it's a daily struggle. Like I haven't eaten all day, which is bad for your sugar,
Hmm.
and I'm in the line of Starbucks, so I have to. My doctor just told me don't get chai tea anymore. So, all right, so I got to do that. So I modify my behavior, but it's not easy.
No,
You know, it's a daily. My God, it's hard.
it's,
That's all I can say.
right.
So I agree with what you're saying. That's all I'm saying. I agree with what you're saying.
Yeah, it's continual. It's a continual process, not just like once and done, but it's so possible, if we focus. So step one, I said, is identify your temperament, right? So I'm going to brief. This is very high level overview, but I am going to introduce you briefly to the 4 types of temperament that we are going to talk about this evening. I'm going to introduce you to Carla. Carla Choleric. Choleric is the type of temperament. It's an extroverted temperament. We'll talk about it more. I'm going to introduce you to Sadie, who is a sanguine temperament, which is also extroverted. Then I'll introduce you to Maggie, Maggie Melancholy. That's me, who is introverted temperament. And then finally, Phyllis, Phlegmatic. Phlegmatic is also an introverted temperament. So those are the 4. Depending on who you talk to, there's a 5th temperament that doesn't get as much attention. It's called supine, but we won't hit that one tonight. But those are the primary 4 that you'll always hear about. You Google these, you'll learn more about them as well. But let's meet Carla first. Carla is a choleric. So in general, her characteristics are very extroverted. And keep in mind too, as we talk about the temperaments, most people are not just one temperament alone. Most people are a blend of different temperaments. We're very unique people. We're a blend of those 6 people I talked about: mom, dad, grandparents. So we're not always just a straight one type of temperament. Sometimes people are, but they can also be blended. So Carla, and you may see yourself in some of these characteristics. Carla is a doer. She likes to lead, and she's usually good at making decisions. Choleric temperaments are typically, you'll see a lot of military leaders and pastors even being choleric temperaments because they're good leaders. They know how to organize people. They like to be moving. She's very goal oriented and enjoys challenges. So you find that a lot in leaders. Because she is always thinking of the goal, however, she can step on people to reach it, becoming very aggressive and competitive. So the choleric temperaments, if they're not balanced and aware of their limitations, at any cost they can just do. That's why a lot of those military leaders, you see some of them, it doesn't matter, they're just barreling over people to get what they need, and that can leave a lot of collateral damage. But on the plus side, cholerics who can rein in and balance all of these behaviors are excellent leaders that people will usually follow. if they are leading in a positive way. And kind of that's what I mentioned. It says she must guard against being too bossy or in taking charge in others' affairs. So those are some of the general, very general characteristics of choleric temperaments, but very goal-oriented, usually very good leaders, good at making decisions, but have to balance that so that they don't just kind of walk over people at any cost. Choleric temperament, sometimes for their socialization, they may be people who like people and like to be around them, but usually because it's something that they want from the people that they're around, because they're leaders. So they're always looking for the next thing. So socialization, you find, is a little different. Okay, well, any questions about Carla before I move forward? Any Carlas on the line? It could be. So now we'll meet Sadie. Sadie is also generally an
I agree with what you said about Carla. I'm sorry. I'm on the Starbucks line too. Sorry, but I agree with what you said.
I forgot your name was Carla.
It'll be 8:17.
Are you really a Carla? I didn't pay attention to her name. I forgot was Carla. But yeah, so the next extroverted type temperament is sanguine. Sanguine, again, generally extroverted. So Sadie is a talker. She's very social and loves people. She enjoys being popular. Sanguines, you guys, are like life of the party. They're like sunshine. People love to be around them, love to see them coming. If they're not there, the party probably won't start till they get there. Sadie, however, can sometimes be hurt when people don't like her because she's so used to people loving her personality and how she engages with everyone. So she wants to be, that's a need of hers. Like we talked about needs, that is a need of hers, to be around people. Sanguines, when they are not around people, that creates their stress and anxiety because they're extroverted and they need the engagement and the connection. So again, learning about your temperament helps you to know what you need. And if you need to be around people, that's fine. Some sanguines, if they live alone, for example, you may find them, if you go to their home, they may have the TV on, the stereo on, the windows open, the dog barking, because they need connection. Where introverted temperaments, which we'll talk about next, are the very opposite. They are stressed when there's too much socialization and involvement with people. So the good thing about learning about this is just learning it's okay. And the best thing to do is be yourself and take the mask off so that you don't have to deal with the stress of operating outside of who you really are. Sadie, her temperament usually has a lot of friends, but not deep relationships. So Sadie knows everybody. Everybody knows Sadie, but there may not be these really, really, really close girlfriends. She's not as selective as other temperaments. So she knows a lot of people, but the relationships aren't really deep. And Sadie likes to goof off. That's not a bad thing, but she always likes to, she often likes to hurry and finish projects. And the reason, anybody know why Sadie wants to hurry up and finish her work?
Start socializing again.
Yeah, she want to party. She's ready. She's like, okay, enough of this work project stuff. So Sadie will often, if she's in the middle of a project or something she has to do, and you call her and say, girl, let's go to the mall. Okay, done. She forgets even that she needs to finish this project. So again, some of those areas that require balance. Nothing wrong with the temperament, but you got to balance sometimes. So that's Sadie. So those are our two extroverted temperaments. The final two are introverted temperaments. So let's meet Maggie, melancholic. So that's me also, melancholy, introverted temperament in general. Maggie, and I mentioned this earlier, is a thinker, sometimes an overthinker, most times an overthinker, an organizer. She feels that there is a right way to do everything and usually has a high degree of, perfectionistic tendencies. I thought perfectionism was a strength until I started really learning about this temperament and realizing it can be, but it truly can be a weakness. Sometimes perfectionism will cause you to sometimes not even do a thing because you're afraid that it may not come out perfect. So you keep delaying it and you may not even do it.
Mhm.
Perfectionism tends to put so much pressure on yourself and others. Expectations sometimes that are absolutely impossible to meet. And I've learned that as I've gotten older. So Maggie also, she's very creative. Her personality is very creative. She desires to solve everything and to take her time and do it right. So as you can see, Maggie is very said things have to be a certain way. And that's what she requires. And she can figure it out. She can do it. And Maggie does not like sudden changes and needs reassurance. So very particular. I've been doing it this way. You're going to have to help me to gradually get into this change and then reassure me that this is going to be okay, or even reassure Maggie about the things that she wants to do. So I don't know. I'm sure I have some Maggies listening today. Um, it's, again, it's who we are, not right, not wrong, but these are some of even me being melancholy, I definitely have had to balance some of these type of behaviors. And as I think Carla said earlier, it's a daily process. It's not something that just once you fix it, you fix it. No, you got to keep these things in your mind. And then finally, Phyllis Phlegmatic. This is another generally introverted temperament. And if you look at the first 6 letters of the word phlegmatic, Phlegm, that spells phlegm, right? We know what phlegm is. So phlegm is thick and slow. And so that phlegmatic temperament is that way. Very easygoing. The phlegmatic temperament wants to preserve their energy at all costs. Like the phlegmatic temperament might see something that needs to happen or be done, but say, I don't think I have to, I don't think I'm gonna let somebody else do that. So sometimes the phlegmatic has to push a little bit out of their comfort zone, but at the same time, not too much, because then that's stressful for the phlegmatic if they're always involved in things and trying to move fast and trying to get stuff done. So it's again about balance. Phyllis, she's a watcher. She's good at making friends and is very loyal. So she's watching, she's observing. Her energy level sometimes says, I'm just gonna watch this. I'm not gonna get involved. Phyllis's temperament does not like big changes, and she wants to preserve her energy, like we talked about, at all costs. She looks for security and can be very sensitive. So Phyllis, again, looks for security, kind of wants to keep things the way they were, doesn't like to rock the boat, generally a peacemaker, just trying to make sure that, well, everybody just get along. Because if we just get along, that keeps everybody with their level of energy. We don't have to exert too much. Phyllis is very caring and has deep relationships, but usually only a couple of very close friends. Phyllis, that phlegmatic, is very selective about who she's going to be with, those couple friends. Too many people, too much energy exerted. So that is Phyllis. So those are our 4. Extroverted to introverted. Any questions about any of the temperaments? And again, it's very high level, but so much more to know about.
Mhm.
Phyllis and Sadie and Carla.
It's interesting, Cheryl, because sometimes you can kind of put yourself, I guess, especially when you take the assessments, you can kind of get put in a category, but it's interesting how you can still kind of see yourself
In all
something
four. Mhm,
category I can probably relate to.
mhm.
You said something in each category?
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's blends. There's definitely blends, and some temperament assessments will come back maybe with a percentage, like 80% melancholy, 10% phlegmatic, but generally there's something that's kind of guiding you along the way. Did someone else say something?
Yes, I was saying that it seems like introverted usually stays kind of, you're going to be from one or the other group. You can mix the introverted, but it's very rare that you go to the extroverted with the introverted. Understand?
Oh, right. I see what you're
Yeah.
saying. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And some temperaments that I work with are really introverted / extroverted. Like it's
Mhm.
interesting. Like some introverts still like people a lot,
Right. Right.
but then after a while, that wears them out. So
Mhm.
they've kind of used up the energy. So it's like it can be a conflict.
Mhm.
I'd
Right.
like to be around the people, but now I've been around them 2 hours and I had enough. So, and that's okay,
Mhm.
as long as you know it. So, I know as a melancholy introverted, that happens to me. I'll go places gung ho to go too. And
Mhm.
then after a while, I don't even know. There's not a reason. There's nothing wrong. Nobody says anything wrong. I'm just ready to go. And
Mhm.
so now that I've started to understand it, it is just temperament. There's nothing wrong with it. So
Yeah.
rather than stress myself out by forcing myself to stay longer, I have to make the decision that
To
I'm going
go.
to go.
Mhm. Is shyness falls on the introvert? Shy, just being
Yes,
shy, socially shy?
yes, ma'am.
Yeah,
Definitely.
definitely.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Mhm.
And again, when a shy person is putting themselves in this extroverted social
Ooh,
situation,
painful.
it's rough.
It's
Yeah.
rough.
And,
Yes.
and vice versa, even when
Yeah.
the extroverted person, like I mentioned, who loves people and loves to be around, is maybe at home alone for
Mm,
days at a time, that's stressful for them.
mhm, mhm.
So that's why I love learning about temperament, because what it does, it helps us know that there's nothing wrong with any of us. We're
Right.
just very different. We're created differently, and it helps you to understand, particularly in maybe husband and wife situations, parent and child. It helps you understand the person better and realize, say, that person you're with is an introvert and you just, he never wants to go out. Oh, it's just so boring. And, so you realize he's not just trying to get on your nerves. That's who he is. So when couples can learn more about each other's temperament, it creates a little more balance and understanding and,
Mhm.
compromising too,
Mhm.
because you don't ever want anybody to compromise so much that they're placing themselves in this stressful position to please the other person. That's
Right.
not what life should be about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, Cheryl, too, the pandemic has kind of taught us, or if nothing else, I think one of the things the pandemic has kind of like opened up your eyes to is it would open up your eyes to where you fall in these categories. Because definitely an introvert, like I have no issues and problems of being home by
Mhm.
myself. But
Did you learn that during the?
introverted people,
Mhm.
yeah, they feel closed in and they just want to get out, and it's like the worst thing ever. And yes, you want to get out. I'm an introvert and I want to get out, but I'm okay with the way it is.
Right. Or you'll get
Yeah.
out for a little bit and then, okay, that's enough.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's okay. Oh, and one more point about Phyllis Phlegmatic I had down there. She wants to be loved by everyone and looks for appreciation. She does want to, again, just be that person who is, just okay, not causing any trouble, not making any waves. I want to have my
Mhm.
friends and just be appreciated for who I am. So that's our four.
Mhm.
So this is the temperament quiz I mentioned. If you're interested in doing it on your own, it's called temperamentquiz.com. It's free. And if if you pay, of course, they'll give you all this more information, but you can still get your general temperament type rating based on temperamentquiz.com. And I think this is one that does break it down maybe with percentages. So you'll see where you're more on one temperament blend than another one. But it's very, very interesting. Temperamentquiz.com. So the next step in this process, so step one, remember, was identifying the temperament. So, once you identify what it is, then two is taking a look at all the strengths and weaknesses and needs of that temperament. So this is just a snapshot of some of the strengths and weaknesses. So like Phyllis, phlegmatic in the green, we just talked about, introverted temperament, likes to be appreciated, things like that. Some of her strengths are that she's calm, reliable, content, just content, not rocking the boat. She's very accepting of things, rational. But then on the weaknesses side, shy. Someone, I think Judy talked about being shy as an introverted temperament, somewhat passive, indecisive, unambitious, apathetic. And unambitious is interesting to me because a phlegmatic may seem unambitious because they just don't exude, all that energy that you might see in a choleric, for example. Doesn't always mean they're unambitious, but sometimes it means that they do need to push a little bit to take that next step to do some things. On the opposite side, the choleric, we talked about the first one, Carla, very good leader, very efficient, a great planner, confident. But on that other side, very demanding, intolerant, impatient. That's where we said these can be good leaders, but they have to really balance how they are handling people, and not so much just as someone to get what they want from them. The sanguine was Sadie. I mentioned she's the life of the party. If she's not there, the party hasn't started. Sadie's very sociable, outgoing, very optimistic. Sanguines are so optimistic. They can be the type of people that, you can be in an argument with, and it's just so heated. And then 20 minutes later, they've forgotten about what it was about. They're fine. It's no big deal. I'm forgiving you. Let's move on. But the person you're arguing with might still be like, well, what do you mean? No, we got to deal with that. So again, it's helping to understand weaknesses on the sanguine side, impulsive, often late. Talked about that. They may be so busy, partying, socializing, they don't realize that it's time for work. Sometimes forgetful, and tend to exaggerate because that exaggeration helps you to keep talking with people and be the life of the party. And then finally, the melancholy, some of the strengths are they're very thoughtful and considerate, organized. We talked about being a perfectionist, but as you see, on the weaknesses side is where that perfectionism falls. Very moody, pessimistic. So like the sanguine is very optimistic. The melancholy is more pessimistic. That's what creates some of that anxiety and negative thinking that melancholies go through. So as you can see, guys, I mean, strengths everywhere, weaknesses everywhere. None of these strengths are any better than any of the others. They're things that I believe as strengths, when we know what they are, we can try to enhance those. How can I even make those better? How can I be a better planner? How can I be more organized? But then those weaknesses, okay, how do I work on being more patient? How do I work on getting to be on time? These are all things that once we know them, and the thing is, we already know. We know these things about ourselves. It's facing it and admitting it and saying, okay, I want to improve this. So the final step is, after we have identified the temperament, dug into the strengths and weaknesses. And I also mentioned on the other screen the needs of the temperament, which we talked about. What does your temperament need? So we talked about, for example, those extroverted temperaments, they need people. Those introverted temperaments need quiet. They need time to come home from work and regenerate and recharge before being with people. So once you start learning those things about yourself, make sure you're getting those things so that your needs are getting met, which is going to help everyone around you eventually, including yourself. So, but that final step, identifying the temperament, talking about the strengths, weaknesses, and needs. And then the last step is modifying some of those behaviors that we said we want to improve on. So some of the ways to do that, I've just listed here so many things we can do. Someone even, I think it was Carla, who I think is gone, mentioned, that she has to pray a lot. She mentioned that even with things she goes through. So again, depending on your faith and your connection, if that's something that you do, that's something that can help too, sometimes more than anything. Positive self-talk, learning how to reduce that negative self-talk about, oh, I know I'm just so late all the time and I can't do anything about it. No, let's change that narrative to, I know I can be better than this. And talk to yourself in ways that are going to place you in that positive mindset, surrounding yourself with like-minded people. I talk about that a lot. Who's your crew? Who are you with most of the time? If you're with everybody else who's always late, you are going to be late. So sometimes we need to make sure that if I want to be on time, I need to kind of get myself with timely people in so many other areas. Another thing is comparing yourself to yourself, not to other people. Sometimes it's a comparison trap we get in sometime, and compare ourselves to other people, and how come I'm not this, and how come I'm not where they are. We so have to stop that, like yesterday, like now, because that takes us down a trap all the time. Theodore Roosevelt has a quote that says, "Comparison is the thief of joy." It will steal your joy all the time because you're constantly trying to be like somebody else. So in this case, we're talking about modifying your own temperament behaviors. Focus on you and things that you want to improve on, and then compare yourself to yourself. How did I do? Last month I was late to work 5 times. This month I'm only late to work twice. Okay, I'm doing better. Or vice versa. Instead of 5, I was late 10 times this month. Well, I need to start dealing with that. But you don't have to compare yourself to anybody else, just yourself. Daily affirmations is another way to kind of goes along with that positive self-talk. I told someone the other day, just repeat over and over as many times as you have to. I have worth and I have value. I have worth and I have value. I have worth and I have value. If you say that enough, you are going to start believing that. So I can be on time. Yes, I can be on time. I am going to be on time today. So just these affirmations of the things that positive talk that gets into your head. And then I just kind of said self-awareness, because that's really what this is all about. You're not going to modify anything if you're not aware of what it is. So learning about your temperament, understanding the strengths and weaknesses and needs, is all about just being aware of who you are. It's okay to admit some of our shortcomings, because we all have them, but let's work on them so that we can become the best version of ourselves that we can be. And I believe, Crystal, our third Self-Care Sunday in April is about becoming your best self, how to do that. And these are going to be some of those things we talk about too. So finally, I just said, when it comes to self-awareness, what does that look like? Seek to learn all you can about yourself. through assessments, through feedback. You can ask family members or friends, tell me 3 positive traits about myself that you see in me, or tell me, one thing that concerns you that you've seen in me. But we have to be ready for that. We have to be open and ready to accept the feedback, so that we can try to improve. And then examine your values. What is important to you in life? What do I really value? So then you're learning about yourself, not what everybody else values, but what do I value? What's important to me? And there again, there's your focus. And then leverage what you learn. Do something with it. Once you learn about yourself and you know what your values are, okay, now it's time to do something about it. I've decided what is important to me is X, Y, and Z. So now, how do I get X, Y, and Z in my life more so that I can be fulfilled and not have to try to fill these voids and gaps with things that aren't productive? Because I'm doing the things that matter to me. And then focus on what matters most. Once you figure out what that is, focus on that, those positive things that you have learned about yourself as you go through this process. So seek to learn all you can about yourself, examine your values, leverage what you learn, and then focus on what matters most. And I love this quote from Oprah Winfrey. I love Oprah. She says, as you become more clear about who you really are, you'll be better able to decide what is best for you the first time around. So once we start realizing who we really are, we can make these good decisions about what's best for us and not have to look to the left and look to the right and seek approval and validation and all of these other things, because now I know who I am. I know that I'm melancholy. I know that I can't stay around you too long. I know I'm going to get stressed out if I stay. If I know all of that, it's okay. Now I can go and do what is best for me. And then there's no stress. And that's what I would love for everyone to get to a point of, reducing stress as much as possible, not self-imposed stress. There's so many things that are going on in our world that we can't control, we can't do anything about, but there's so much we can do something about for ourselves. So that's it. Questions, comments?
I have a question. As far as an introverted, I'm introverted. I consider myself introverted, a mixture of both,
Okay.
but of the two introverts. But can an extrovert help you to improve some of those negative parts of your introverted life if you hang around them? There's some things that I wouldn't want to pick up habit of the extrovert, but there's some things that I could learn, help me to bring me more out of my shell, or
Yeah.
So you said hang around people with like-mindedness, but if the extrovert is not really like-minded.
Not necessarily. There may be some things, but let me first say, you mentioned something about the negative
Right.
traits, but
Mhm,
let me
mhm.
say it's not negative. Let me just say that,
It's not negative.
your
Okay.
introverted temperament is not negative.
Okay.
There are just things that are different. It's totally nothing wrong with introvert, extrovert at all.
Okay.
It's just different. But if you feel that you want to come out of your shell a little
Mhm.
bit,
Good.
yes, sometimes spending time with somebody who is more extroverted,
Mhm,
definitely, as long as you are not stressed about that, as long as you
mhm.
don't feel forced. But remember, your temperament doesn't change. Remember, it's just, yeah, it's just modifying some of the behaviors so that
Okay.
maybe some of that shyness that you might want to improve
Mhm.
can kind of open up
Okay.
a little bit. Yeah.
Okay. Mhm.
But
Okay.
nothing negative though.
Right. Not negative. Don't look at it as negative. It's
No.
just something.
Yep.
Okay.
No temperament is negative. We can't, it's not, because this is who we were created to be. So
Okay.
we are
Gotcha.
okay. But I like what you said though, Judy,
Mhm.
because you're saying that you want to do something about
Mhm.
that. You're saying
Yes.
that you want to take some steps to maybe come out of your
Come out
shell
a
a
little bit.
little bit.
Yeah, a little
Right.
bit. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
slowly but surely, just do
Mhm.
something. I would encourage you to maybe just try to do something you have never done.
Mm.
Like, try
Okay.
it. Just
Like.
try it. I don't know. Something that maybe you have thought about doing before,
Mhm.
but your
Mhm.
shyness says, "Oh, I can't do that."
Okay, I can't do it. Uh-huh.
Mhm.
Okay.
It
But you
gets
know what? I noticed too, as I get older, I seem to tend to be more introverted because I really don't care what anybody says anymore. It's none of my business what people think about me anymore.
That's
When
very,
you get to a certain age, so
very true.
you
So
do
then
find yourself moving over to the extroverted side a little bit.
a little, yeah, because you're not,
So,
yeah,
not
that's
really.
that the very beginning of this presentation, that personality and that mask that we wear sometimes.
Mhm. Mhm.
That might have been a mask that said,
Mhm.
I need to be this way. But now as you get
Mhm.
older, you're taking that mask off and like,
Right.
no,
Yeah. Okay.
I can be this way.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
good question though.
Okay. All
Yeah,
right. Great. Thank you.
yeah. Anyone else?
No question, Cheryl, but just again, a great presentation. And I think it's good to kind of point out, like in the very beginning, you were talking about the disposition and understanding who you are, and that it's an inborn, like it's something that you're born with. And I think that sometimes people think that they have to, they can change. I don't know. We get a lot of advice about changing. Change is good, and change is good.
Mm,
But it's interesting that you I guess the psychological part of it is that you really cannot change your temperament,
mm, mm.
that you can just modify it. So I think that's important for people to kind of know and realize that it's okay that you can't change it. It's just the going through the modification process.
Yeah, and I think when you modify to things to a degree that you feel is necessary, then it becomes a little more natural, depending
Hmm.
on what that is. But we were created just a certain way. But these weaknesses, I believe, are there because we need to lean on someone for
Hmm.
improvement. We
Hmm.
can't improve by ourselves. And if we didn't have anything to improve, we wouldn't ever feel like we needed help.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, if we didn't have any weaknesses, we would just be like, I'm good. I'm all that. So I don't need any help. I don't need to
Hmm.
see anybody. I don't need to pray. I don't need to have support. So I believe that's why we're created with weaknesses.
Yeah, and I like what Judy said too. If you hang around extroverts, like if you're an introvert,
Hmm.
like my sister, she's more of an extrovert.
Hmm.
And so I sometimes really like going to, especially really social events with her, because she'll pick up where
Will carry you. She'll
I
carry
That's
just
so
can't
true.
do it. Yes. And it's like I can kind of piggyback and I'm like, she is the life of the party. I am not the life of the party, but I know if I go to this party with my sister, I'm all right because she'll handle that portion for me.
So,
Yeah. I have.
Judy, that just means you have to pick the right extrovert,
Yeah.
Judy.
Yes, I have my sister too. It's the same. I say
Yeah.
everybody's always looking at her. She's always, and she doesn't mind it. She loves the attention,
Okay.
and I'm just like, oh my gosh, if I could just shrink behind her.
Just
But
hide
yeah,
behind her.
but she does pull out. She does help me to overcome some of the weaknesses that I see in my temperament.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
yes,
that's true. Just that she lives in Florida and I don't get to see her much. So that's also
Okay.
oh yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.